Alright, today I will be refuting Carl's proposition that public libraries continue to play a vital role in modern society. He has four secondary claims. The first one is digital content available on the internet is incomplete and inaccessible to a significant percentage of Americans. The second one is public libraries foster civil engagement. Public libraries stay current with new technologies and adapt systems to meet the needs of the current times. And finally, public library usage has increased since the introduction of computers and the internet. His first claim, I thought he did a good job showing how digital content available on the internet is incomplete because there's still some information that is only available in libraries. But he also tries to make the point that internet is inaccessible to a large percentage of Americans by showing a survey done in 2012. His survey showed that Hispanics and African Americans had the lowest percentage of internet access at home, whereas Hispanics had Asians had the highest. The problem is just because someone doesn't have internet access at home doesn't necessarily mean they're going to the library to use it. He does not give any evidence to prove this connection actually exists. He hopes that the audience will make the inference leap, but this would be unwise and it's too broad of a leap to make. When I looked at the American Library Association website, they had conducted their own statistics showing that all races are almost equal in using internet and computer access at libraries, and actually there was a 7% increase in Asians, which is the opposite of what Carl wanted us to assume. This disproves his notion that says Hispanics and blacks have less access at home, they would then which his survey demonstrated, they would then go to the libraries to use it more often, showing that there is no connection to his proposition. Secondly, his second claim, he states that public libraries continue to foster civil engagement. His warrant implies that civil engagement present in libraries shows that they still play a vital role in modern society. But libraries aren't necessarily the place where civil engagement is most commonly seen in neighborhoods, and it's actually a recreational or community center that does this more frequently. So therefore, civil engagement would still frequently occur without the presence of libraries. Cindy Curtis, Virginia Beach Deputy City Manager, says, in towns that have both community centers and public libraries, it is a reoccurring realization the bigger number of locals attend civil engagement type activities located at community centers and do so more frequently than anywhere else. You may argue that not all towns have community centers, but actually in the United States we have 897,000 community centers, which is twice as many public and private libraries combined. So you would not have to travel far to find a community center that fosters the civil engagement you're looking for. During his third secondary claim, Carl makes a strong case of how libraries stay current with new technologies and adapt to meet the needs of today. This is true, but he gives no support of how often these technologies are being used. And although they are very useful, the Pew Research Center of Libraries did a survey themselves on how many people over the age of 16 attending libraries are familiar with these online resources. 22% said that they were very familiar and knew how to work them, while 31% said that they knew little or nothing at all about how to work online services. Library online services, although they have adapted, are still not being recognized to the full modern potential of today. So the majority of library users are unaware of these efforts to stay updated with times. It will have a harder time staying a vital role in modern society. I think Carl should have addressed the need for awareness. And finally, in his fourth supporting claim, he says that the usage of library was actually increased after the introduction of computers and the internet. I think this point most clearly connects to his proposition, but I would argue there's not too much controversy over this fact. In fact, many believe that this is due to these inventions, because once computers and the internet were invented and people had not yet adapted, they needed a place to go, and the library became one of the only free places that they could access these resources. Although I think this is a temperamental increase. Carl shows the 23% increase from 2001 to 2011, but since 2011 and today, visits have actually slightly decreased according to the American Library Association. And so did the use of computers by 6% this year. A couple years ago, free internet access could only be accessed in libraries, but that is no longer the case today. For example, the San Francisco government is very proud to announce that they have over 20 public parks that offer free Wi-Fi as long as all of their Market Street, which was not the case in 2011. If internet is more widely accessible, we can no longer make the assumptions that people will continue going to the internet, going to the library to access it. And visits will go down once more, showing that the increase Carl mentioned will not last long. So in conclusion, I believe that Carl's speech brings up many important points for the vitality of libraries, but it is not enough to convince me that libraries will continue to play a vital role in modern society. Thank you.
Burn them down.
Well, all the structural stuff is very easy to follow, so I appreciate that. On the first point, it did sound like you were starting off with a critique rather than a refutation, but then you got more involved in the argument, and I thought that it made a little bit more sense. I do think that there is a kind of an inference here that the advocate was saying that if they don't have access at home, then they will go to the library. I don't know that that was the advocate's claim. I think the claim was that by having that as an option, it's a possibility that they wouldn't have otherwise. I do think you have better arguments later on that apply to that issue, and that is the accessibility of Wi-Fi and all kinds of other places. Also data about the frequency with which different ethnic groups use the library. I think the advocate's point on this was that there are still people who don't have access to the internet. Not necessarily that that means that they have to go to the library, but the library does provide that as an option. So it's... I think you gave a reasonable press on this point. I just thought that it's not the key issue that's going on here. I thought the better arguments were the ones that occurred subsequently. I thought the civil engagement argument, for instance, you did an excellent job talking about how alternative available resources are more likely to be utilized, and that they are, in fact, there are double the number of those kinds of resources as are available at libraries, and I thought that that answers that point very well. You've got a good counterclaim on that point. The same thing with the idea on the third point that the libraries are adapting and creating all this new information. The claim that you make that says people are uninformed about those things, I think, is a good counter response to that point. Although, you know, if this was a debate, I think I can imagine easily Carl coming up and saying, so what you're really saying is that people need to learn how to use libraries, not that the libraries don't have any utility, but they just need to learn how to use them, which, by the way, is another good reason to go to the library, because then they can teach you how to use some of those resources. So I think you've got a good response on this point, but I can see easy responses to that argument down the road. The last argument I thought was also pretty effective. Look, times change pretty quickly, and the whole world is rapidly developing all kinds of technological advancements. And the truth is that to get access to the internet, you don't have to be sitting at home on a desktop anymore, connected to some wire that's going to get you linked up. Wi-Fi is available. People have tablets. By the way, the first one that jumps out at me is, what percentage of the population have smartphones? Because there's a whole bunch of information that's just available right there that doesn't require going any place other than your pocket to get access to the information that is being talked about there. So I thought that was, you're on the right track there. Maybe you missed a little bit of that argument, but I thought you got most of the argument there. And you were very efficient at summarizing the argument also, so it sounds good. Thank you.